Good morning, welcome back. We're working on Gem Wars. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be creating some customization options for the users. That includes when they come to your board, you're going to have a number of different board types, a number of different block types, a number of gem types and UI types. And those can be unlockable, well, either through chests or for direct purchases. And then we need to code these into the game. So let's do that right now. The first thing I want to do is we're going to start on the back end for this. So I need to make a new, let me think about it, scriptable object, and I want to call it a board type. And we're going to say board type set SO. And this is called boards types. And this doesn't have anything on it. And then we need to have the individual board on there. So that's a board type SO. And this is board type sets. Okay. And so on this set, it's going to have a collection of these board type SO called boards types. And this one's going to have a GUID for my board type set SO ID. So now we have our one-to-many relationship set up. These board types don't have a connection to anything. These are just standalone objects that have a number of boards that are associated to them. So we're going to need to create another object here, and we can either call it a player item. Yeah, let's do that. So these two are fine. So we're going to go up to the context here, and I'm going to add board type SO for board types, and then another one for board types sets. Okay, we need to make a new object, which is called a player item. And this one's going to be a player item board type set. Okay, and in this we want to have a GUID for my board type set SOID. We can also move this is selected here to the base class so that we don't need to have it in each one. It's already connected to player, so now over here I want to say that this has a number of player item board type set called player items board types sets. And that's it. So on my application database context, I need to add in here a player item board type sets, players, items, boards, types, sets. And that's it. So now in my data access layer, I have a auto mapper here, and we want to map my, and we have a couple of these. We have a board type set. And then we have another set, which is a board type. So in my library, I need to create a new scriptable object for a board type SODTO. And then also a board type set SODTO. And this set, regular type 1, is going to have a GUID for my board type set SOID. And the DTO here needs to have a we'll add that in just a second. The other one is on my request. I need to have a request here for a board type set board type set create request. And then a board type create request. And my board type needs to have a GUID for my board type set SOID in it. I want to buy a course about ASP.NET Core versus Angular, your identity server for, but not the videos you uploaded. I want to buy a course about your identity server for, but not the videos. Okay, so you're not a fan of the videos that I uploaded is what you're saying, but you want me to do kind of like a formal course on how to use identity server for and the 4 types of auth. Is that correct? Okay, so now that we have the requests done, in my data access layer under scriptable objects, we have a couple of different ones here that we need to add in. We need to add in on my read a board type SO, which goes to a board type SODTO. And then a board type set. Oh, no, it's no problem. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding correctly so I can produce what it is that you're looking for. And now in here we want to have a new type called a board type SODTO. And actually, with all of these, I can get rid of this DTO. I'm not going to do all of them right now, just some of them. Maybe half of them. Finish these audio objects and call it. So board type SO, and then a board type set SO. Create or update board type SO and board type set SO DTO. So we're going to add these two functions down here. And this will create the scriptable objects on the server. So this is a board type SO DTO. And this is a board type create request. Boards types. And then what I want to do is I want to set these properties here. This is a board type SO. And that's it. And then we're going to map this to the board type SO. Okay, we need to do the other one here for the board type set. Okay, and this is a board types sets SOs. And then this is going to be a board type set here. And then the same thing here. And this goes to a board type set SO DTO like that. Did you program something in assembly? Says Ant and Steffa on Steffa. What do you mean did I program something in an assembly? I haven't made anything in assembly on the channel, but we're working in C# right now. I'm working in my scriptable object data access layer. So scriptable objects in Unity are like pre-created database records, except for that they're like an object that stores in the computer, and I can make settings and upload them back to the server and have them, when you download them to the game, it updates all the objects throughout the game. So we're adding in board types and board type sets so that we can have unlockables for players. So this is done here. We need to have a new enum called a, well, let's just finish these up here before I forget. It's only a few. Now, the more I'm thinking about it, there isn't a set. It's just board type. So down here, we're going to have a new enum called public enum called board type, and we're going to say it's called default. Now we already have a board type in here. So we're going to change this to be called game board type. Okay, we're also going to have another one here called a block type, which I probably already have in here as well. We'll do it like that. We're going to have another one for gems type. And another one for the UI type. In my entities now, underneath scriptable objects for board type set, I'm going to move these just to board type. And then get rid of board type set. And then I'm going to rename this file board type. Like that. Okay, on my board type, I also want to have a board type like that. Nice, so you're using Unity. I created a game, it was fun. Is your game complete? I have a published game, which is called There Is No Turning Back. That's available on Steam and Android on the Play Store. And then this game is called Gem Wars. I'm just about to push the demo out, and the demo has just single player, but not the multiplayer in it. That's the final piece we have to create still. And then that will be released on Android, iOS, and I think that's it. Maybe Steam if we have some desire. Are you not afraid that your code will be stolen and made products to make money? I expect more .NET Core web series. Oh, we're doing a lot actually in .NET Core. All of this is backend for .NET Core, and we are using Entity Framework here to manipulate the database. The way I look at it is that while I type code here on stream, I don't do 100% of it, and then the projects are not open source. So people would have to sit here for extended periods of time and then kind of copy it down, and it might just be easier to write your own code if you were going to do that. So I have a lot of packages that I've created out on NuGet, which are available for people to use on their own projects. So I'm really not too afraid of that. And then I try to do anything with sensitive coding off air. iOS is too expensive. What do you mean it's too expensive to get started? Because you have to buy all their equipment, which is what's expensive. Okay. So that means that in the data access layer, we can scrap this one. And we can also get rid of my board type set. And we're going to say this is a player item board type DTO. And this is going to be a board type SO DTO. Board type SO ID, sorry. And then my is selected, we can move that to be on player item. Okay. Okay, we want to have on here a board type called board type, and then also on my request, we just want to have a board type called board type. That's it. $100 a year is too much. Android is only a one-time payment. Oh yeah. The yearly price for the iOS developer license. Although it's open source, you still have to pay for the packages that you've created if you use your source, right? So the source is not available, but the packages are. So here, take a look over here at NuGet live or dev trying. I guess you could do NuGet.pixelhorrorstudios.com. So you can see I've got 38 packages and 110,000 different downloads of these packages. I've got some in here for TCP, for Ali chat interactions, for WebSockets, for if you're doing end-tier programming. I have a monitoring app which we've created, a sitemaps tool, a WebSocket, another WebSocket tool for the monitor, and then a Twitch bot, and Ali chat. We've got something for Steam and PayPal. So there's a number of different things out there, and these are all free open source, just providing back to the same community that's helped me along my journey. Okay. So up here now, I can get rid of this board type set because this doesn't exist anymore. And then same with this function. Now, on my board, we're also going to be passing in an object. So if I look here, this is the bit to get the existing object. So in here, we're going to make a new byte array called sprite. Yes, all of those are free. And then I also want to add on here a new string for the sprite URI and the sprite key. This is a new record. This is an existing record. And these are going to go inside of board types. Like that. Why are you motivated to make them free? So for me as a developer, I rely a lot on open source packages that are maintained by communities, and I use them in a lot of my production apps, and it helps keep my speed up. So a lot of times, though, I have to create packages that are used in my applications, but they don't contain any sensitive code. It might just be something to like manage a TCP server or something like that. So I put those out there because I'm using them in a variety of my own projects, so they need to be on a compiled repository. I could make it private, but because there's nothing sensitive, I have no problem putting it out there publicly so that other people can use it, and that way contributing back to the same developer community that that has helped me. Hey there, keeping track of this account. It's good to see you, man. I see you in here sometimes. The Coding Stockbroker. How's it going? It's going great today. How are you doing? Thank you for coming and joining us today. Okay, so we're all done here with our creation. We're saving them. We need to look at the player items now. So this one, we want to say that we have a case player item board type like that. DTO board type equals a mapper.map of my player item board type DTO of my C. DTO board type dot object type equals a board type equals a player item. The player item type is a board type. We also have a blocks type, a gems type, and a UI type. And then we want to do a dtos.addMyDTO type, and then we do a break. When I look at my model here for a scriptable object for board type, I need to have on here a bool called isDefault. And then here, we're going to add in here a player item board type DTO. Player item board types. Sometimes your channel is so good that I don't want to share it with everyone. I mean, if you like, I'm happy to hear that you're enjoying it. Okay? This here is my player items of type player item board type DTO to array. So we're reading the player. We're reading the player VMs. This is where we're creating the player. So here I want to say this is for default avatar, default FXS set. This is default music set. This is going to be default board type. And it's going to be selected. We're going to say it's a default board type equals await context.board types SOs. And we want to get the first or default where my is default and it is active and it is active. And active is my flag for delete. Is active is for if that is currently enabled in the game. I think this job only works until 40 years old. Actually, I disagree with that. I know a lot of older developers. I have lots of different theories on the way to help as we get older in this community, because the younger generation needs to help push the older generation, but the older generation should provide stability and code consistency. I am 34. Okay, so here, now I want to do a, right here we have a new function called a unlock board type asynchronous. And this is a board type ID. If this is selected, we're going to select all of my previous board types. And this is existing board types selected. And we're just going to set them to be not selected. And then this is a player item board type. And we're going to add in the board type here is my board type SOID is my board type ID, which we're going to say is board type SOID. Player item board type goes into players items board types. And we're going to add it and then convert this to be a player item board type DTO. Now we're going to unlock this board type in create player. This is a player item default board type. And we're going to do this for my default board type.id, my entity.id, my true, and then the context. And we want this to be an await. And then down here, I need to create a new array for this. And we're going to pass in my player item default board type. That's it. So in the AI, I never thought I would study on Twitch. Yeah, I found it interesting when I saw people first streaming software development. I said, I don't really understand how it works for games, but for software development, I see it's a great place to meet with other people that are working with it, ask questions, learn, provide input on what they're working on. It's almost like sharing a screen, right? So here we want to have my player items board types. And we're going to have a new board type, which is going to be this. It's going to be is selected as true. My object type is a player item, and my player item type is a board type. Now, for this to work, my opponent SO now needs to have a board type SOID on it. Like that. And now this needs to have a number of opponent SO called opponents SOs. And so this one is my opponent SO.board type SOID. And that's it. Okay, let's go move this to the interface. And now what I need to do is on my lib for opponent, I need to have a board type SOID on here. And then the same thing on the request. And then we're going to apply that in the data access layer for the scriptable objects. For opponent. Like that. And then like that. Okay. Okay, let it build. Got a few errors in here. No, I think my internet hiccuped. Sorry about that. We can get rid of these. And then these. And now it should build. Almost. Okay. Okay, it says that because I changed these, we need to change them in this service. Luckily, it goes very fast. And okay, so down here, we need to have a new DTO, which we're passing across, called a board type SO, which makes a new request here called a board type create request. And your board type is c.boardType, and your sprite is going to be and then this is a board type SO. So for the sprite, we need to do this. So this is cropped texture board type. And then the final line is this. Like that. Okay, we need to delete these DTO. So now this is a game board type. And so on my DTO, this is now called a game board type. Which means that my create request that's right. This is where I'm creating my player locally. So this is going to be a player items board types equals one of these. And we're going to say that my board type SO is, and we're going to get that in just a second, it is selected. My object type is a player item. And my item type here is a board type. So this comes from a GUID.parse of my opponent.board type so.id. So we've made it on the front end and we've made it on the back end now that they both have a board type. So up here, we're going to add a board type SO called board type SO. If I look at my entity in here, that's right. That's right. Easy peasy. Okay, game board instance DTO. We're going to unload these for a second and then rebuild it. And now here we're going to that's not loaded at the moment. Rebuild it. Hey, Great Gamer, welcome back to the channel. How are you doing? Okay, now we're ready to create our board type. So in the game, I'm going to make a new scriptable object. I'm going to make a new folder in here called unlockables. And now I'm going to make a new SO called board type SO. And this is going to be a board type. And then we're also going to have a sprite. And now we're going to try to rebuild it. I'm good. I had a busy 4 weeks. Oh, tell me about that. Why are you so busy? Okay, that's done. So in my base game manager offline, you have this create player here. We want to look for this line. Perfect. So in this case, this player VM I don't see where we're creating the player items for this. So we have a new player item. We'll do this one. This is in the wrong project, because that's right. Work on top of a lot of game creating, come up with ideas. If so many come off them, and then that makes me another one, because I always feel like that idea is better than the current one. You might need to focus a little bit on like completing one of those, you know? I'm looking for we're just getting the defaults if there is none available. Okay. So what that means is now, when you're starting your game, you have a start scene. Down here is your board script where you're initting it. Now it's actually the background, which is a UI component, right? Like, I need tips on how I can stick to one thing. I'm creating an FPS game. I can always come back to it, but it's taking forever because I switch. I find that streaming helps me because I'm a little ADHD. I also find that if I force myself to continue to work on the same project, I sometimes will allow myself to have two, so that way I don't get too bored. But I used to have a hard time not being able to finish things, and then I really, really, really focused on that. And now I seem to be doing a little bit better. Okay. So in my UI script, is it in UI? Let's look at the game for a second. Yeah, streaming really helps. I'm pretty ADHD. Streaming really helps keep me like, come on, girl. Okay, there we go. And now, if I go to a scriptable object board type. We can say board type default, like that. And I can dump that in the asset database. And my sprite is going to be panel 27. Okay. So on my free play, on my base UI script, we want to have a new, under init, which is called a board type SO called board type. And so up here, we're going to have a new image called background image. And I can say background image dot sprite is equal to my board type dot sprite. Are you still are you sticking around? Oh, Sound of Gaming, I'm sorry. How are you doing, man? Good to see you. Welcome to the channel. How goes it today? Welcome. So in here, this is offline. And so if it's offline, that means that we're just going to use the default. So here I want to do a scriptable object factory dot. And now what I want to do is a get this is a get board type default SO. Actually, we could just say get board type, which is a board type. Of type board type. And we want to get the first one where the board type is equal to board type and it's active. We're going to call this create board type. If my instance is equal to null, then I want to return null. Otherwise, I want to return a create scriptable, create, what is it called? Object GUID of my instance. You also need to have another one here. We're just going to say default. Because this one is going to be by a string of my board type SOID. I'm good, he says. How are you? Not doing much, just getting groceries and laying low. That sounds like a good weekend day. I had my last C# programming exam the other day. Got 100%. Congratulations. That is amazing. That's a great score. We just started making Windows Form apps, graduated from making console apps. That's cool. Windows Forms are all right. And they're not so much used anymore, so hopefully you move to web apps pretty soon. But that's great. Congratulations on the 100. That's a great feeling. So this is going to be create board type default SO. which goes board type default. When you're online, that's fine. When you're online, we want to do a scriptable object factory dot create board type of my and I want to look at my data cache dot player VM dot player items board types dot first or default X where it is selected. Board type SOID. And this is a board type SO. We're going to say to do Rob, this is temporary, needs to, if plain multiplayer, needs to pull from the home player. And we'll deal with that later. Yep. The more advanced class we're taking next semester, teaching us how to make web apps with C# ASP.NET. Looking forward to that. That's awesome. Hopefully it's doing it modernly with like .NET Core, learn some Razor, maybe a little MVC, hopefully not web forms. Within the past day or so of making Windows form apps, I can start to see why people don't like making them. It's a little cumbersome. Yeah, I definitely find that as technology improves, the amount of work it takes to create a deliverable drops. So that's my big takeaway from Windows Forms apps. And I find that those controls have a lot of little caveats that you have to do to make sure they work correctly. In this one, we need to add in here a board type SO. So my concern is that see, we have this thing set up here as a default. If I look at my asset exporter for HTTP, you don't have that as default. second here. If I look at where this is being created, is default is a bool, which is not. We want it to be the board type is equal to default. A professor, make these Windows Forms apps should be fun. It's not. Well, are they a little bit older? Because potentially Windows Forms apps, when they were in their prime, might have been like their wheelhouse. So they might be a lot of fun for them. I mean, that's what I'm saying. 'Cause with technology improving, I always feel like software developers, we have to be like doctors. We have to have continuous education all the time. New technologies come out every day. And if we static, then, you know, oh, that's true. So here in offline, when I go to the next board, it's going to be a scriptable object factory dot create board type default SO. And we can pass that in here. And in the battle, this needs to be changed. We're just going to do a var board type SO equals scriptable object factory dot create board type of my data cache dot player VM dot player items board types dot first store default, the one that is selected. And I want to get the ID of that. And we want to do that to string. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to test it. So back over here in title, we're going to change this image to be like this one. And we'll run it offline. Okay, we'll play offline. Object not set to a reference. So what's wrong here is that in my opponents, all of these need to have a board type. And then in my data exporter, I want to do a GUID.parse of my board type so.id. And then in the data access layer, we're just going to double check. I think I already did it. Board type And then where we are creating the opponent, there, that's already there. That's good. Did this finish yet? And try it again. So it got closer. Now it's failing because my UI manager doesn't have a reference to the background image. Try it again. Odd. Try it again. There it is. And now we can see the board has changed. Perfect. So we're going to move this back to be panel 27. And then in my SQL server, I'm going to delete the database. And in the back end, we'll set the WebAPI as the startup project, delete our migrations, and do a add migration init. Okay, and then I'm going to do an update database. Okay, we got an error because board type as a foreign key that we need to associate here. So let me add that into the context. It's this one. Board type SO has one. Opponent SO has one board type with many opponent SOs. And then we also want to do the ID like that. And then we also have one for player items. Player item board type has one board type with many player items board types. And our board type has an index which is your player ID and your board type SO ID. That way you can't ever unlock more than two of them. Now we'll add my migration again. And I'm going to do an update database. That worked. Now we can start the back end. I'm going to use this moment to clear out my AWS S3 bucket, which is storing my images. Back in the game, on my title manager, I want to post all my objects out to the server. Damn, look at all that spam. Some people need a life. Yep, they all get banned, just like that. Hooray. Okay. Back over here under Gem Wars, we're going to delete everything. And now I'm going to run it. Give it just another second here. Okay, it's going to prep everything now. So over here on the server, we should see this payload come in here. Here. There it is. 3010 objects is correct. We'll run that. Now this takes just a minute. In the meantime, I can look at my title manager and get rid of my audio manager, sorry. And this is going to run for about 5 minutes to post all those objects. So I'm going to take a short break. I'll be back in 15 minutes, let's say 20 minutes. When we come back, we're going to make sure that all the board types are working, and then we're going to jump over either into block types, gem types, or UI types. If you have any questions, this is a great time to pop them into the chat. Also, check us out at our Discord, discord.pixelhorrorstudios.com, and I put all these videos up at youtube.pixelhorrorstudios.com. Thanks again. Good to see you, Santa Gaming. I'll be back in just 20 minutes.